the Democrats and the Republicans in the Senate got together and miraculously, after decades of lethargy and indifference and sandbagging and sabotage, arrived at a border compromise package with billions of dollars of new investment for Border Patrol officers, immigration and asylum judges, better surveillance and detection technology for fentanyl and other kinds of drugs. And then the fourth branch of government, Donald Trump, acting with the fifth branch of government, Vladimir Putin, blew up the whole package. Why? Because Donald Trump doesn't want a border solution. He wants a border problem to run on. And of course, Vladimir Putin doesn't want $60 billion going to President Zelensky and the people of Ukraine trying to defend their land and their people and their institutions. And so they just wrecked the whole thing.
Your beautiful Democrat bastions of socialism, these cities are destroyed. And all the Democrats now think this is a problem. Just a year ago, the administration was saying, there's no problem, there's no problem. The southern border's secure, the southern border's secure. Literally, the vice president, the president repeatedly said this. President Trump is not the person that caused this. It is President Biden. And the fact that President Biden said that it's Trump's fault is the most ridiculous thing in the whole world.
I'm sorry, my colleague just exited the room. He offered some provocative suggestions. One was in talking about our beautiful democratic bastions of socialism. I'm not quite sure what he's referring to, but certainly not the ugly bastions of communism that Donald Trump celebrates every day, like his man crush, the dictator of North Korea, or Vladimir Putin, the former chief of the KGB, who's his clear puppet master, or the Chinese leader Xi, who Donald Trump has praised more than 20 times in tweets or X's or whatever he sends out to the world.
My time has expired, so I recognize my friend and colleague, Mr. Raskin, for 5 minutes for a question.
Thank you kindly, Chairman Higgins, and wonderful to be here with you. It may just be you and me left here on Capitol Hill. Our colleagues seem to have made their way to the airport. But I'm glad we're going to get a chance to discuss this after a very eventful week or two. I believe the Speaker sent us into recess. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Higgins, but I think that we're going to be away for a couple weeks now. But here's where I think we are, and Mr. Hauser, I wanted to get... Sorry?
You can stay.
Oh, good. I appreciate that. Democracy and freedom are under siege all over the world right now. And we have terrorists in the Middle East. We have Vladimir Putin, who has executed a filthy, bloody, imperialist invasion of Ukraine to destabilize their democracy and take over their country. We have the communist bureaucrats of China destabilizing the Indo-Pacific. And so President Biden has said we need to get aid, $60 billion to our allies in Ukraine, who are under the gun with Russian military drones and attacks on civilians. The Israeli government is responding to Hamas's brutal terrorist atrocities of October 7th. We have a besieged, suffering population in Gaza, which would be the partial recipient of $10 billion going out in humanitarian relief, both to Gaza and to people in Ukraine, and then money also going to the Indo-Pacific. But what we heard from the Republicans is, no way, we're not going to help our Democratic allies and besieged peoples all over the world unless we deal with the border first. To the shock and dismay of Senator McConnell and the Senator Langford, the other ultra-conservative Republican senators who spent time negotiating that deal and getting the vast majority of everything they wanted, and you've got the Republican leaders in the Senate saying we will never get a better deal than this, and they destroyed it because Donald Trump didn't want it, and so everybody got in line like a bunch of lemmings and walked the cliff with Donald Trump. And I think what happened in the 3rd District of New York, replacing Mr. Santos with our colleague Tom Suozzi, demonstrates to them what America understands, They think America doesn't understand. America does understand who was serious about the border and immigration and who is serious about defending democracy and freedom and our allies around the world. Now, I want to ask you the question, Mr. Hauser. Am I properly characterizing what happened in the Senate and what's in that package?
Sir, from what I've read concerning the bipartisan bill, it was a great step forward in a lot of regards. Not only in the way of asylum processing, but it also shows the importance of the entire immigration continuum being supplied and resourced in the manner in which it needs to.
Have there been any other bipartisan legislative breakthroughs like that in your time in office? You were at ICE. You were the chief of staff at ICE, right?
Yes, sir.
Did you have any bipartisan legislative breakthroughs while you were on the job like that?
No, sir. In many parts of the bill, you talk about the issues that we care about at ICE and CBP and others. There's many resources and capabilities within that legislation that would provide the ability to go after fentanyl, to go after drugs, to go after human smuggling, go after trafficking, and give our officers what they need.
So the real question is, do we want immigration solutions, border solutions, or do we just want problems to run against to divide the country and to try to polarize the situation? And do we want to do the bidding of Vladimir Putin, who obviously doesn't want us supporting our allies in Ukraine? And I noticed that the former President Trump basically invited Russia to march into any European country he wants at this point. So I think I admire the audacity and the courage of my colleagues for calling this hearing, but I am baffled why they think this is to their political advantage or to the benefit of the people of America. I yield back.
Mr. Timmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for letting me waive on the subcommittee hearing. I am really just kind of shocked at what I just heard from the ranking member. This is one of the most ridiculous conversations I've ever had in Congress. For the last 3 years, President Biden has allowed millions and millions of people to cross the southern border illegally. The policies under Secretary Mayorkas have destroyed your cities, New York, Washington, D.C., Chicago, San Francisco, in ruins because the amount of government benefits that are being absorbed by the millions of people that have crossed the southern border illegally are destroying your cities. Just 2 weeks ago, a Brooklyn school shut down. All the kids went remote because they didn't have any place to house immigrants. You have mayors screaming from the rooftops. Elected officials in Chicago recently said, we earned this. The progressives, their policies of open border of sanctuary cities have caused these problems. They said that. These are Democrats that are saying this. So now you say, well, we tried to fix it in the Senate, some bizarre deal that involved $100 billion plus to Ukraine, Taiwan, Israel, completely unrelated, for a little teeny step in the right direction for border security, which still allows 5,000 people every day to cross the southern border. That is not a solution to this problem. We need to secure the southern border. And by the way, we don't need legislation to do this. We don't. All that Biden has to do is undo what he did in the weeks after he got sworn in. He needs to end catch and release. He needs to reinstate remain in Mexico. He needs to continue funding border wall construction. Those are the first three things. I've been on the border 5 times in the last few years, and the last time I was there, the Customs and Border Patrol agent didn't say, we need more money. He said, we need to turn the spigot off. We have way too many people crossing the southern border, and the current policies in place do not allow them to process them effectively. We have no way of knowing who's coming into this country. It's outrageous. So for you to say that the Senate border deal was the solution and we're not serious about it, your party wouldn't even agree there was a problem until a couple months ago. And now that there's an election coming up, all of a sudden it's a problem and it's the Republicans' fault?
In any event, he says that all we needed to do was to execute the negotiated terms with Mexico. Again, I'm not quite sure what he's referring to. Donald Trump promised that he would build a wall and Mexico would pay for it. And I think on his first day in office, Mexico said that it wasn't going to pay for it. And of course, there's been no wall. And of course, that's not an answer to the problems we have. But there was an answer that was negotiated in the Senate. And in fact, the Republicans understood that we needed legislation. They passed legislation, H.R. 2. That's what I wanted to ask Mr. Hauser about, if I could just give him a second. Would H.R. 2 solve the problems of the country?
Sir, operationally, if you look at, from my personal belief, if you look at the restrictions on Border Patrol agents' ability to utilize technology, to utilize their resources to move migrants for processing, for screening. You look at the sort of mandatory detention that it would create across the southern border in soft-sided facilities that are extremely dangerous, as some of the congressmen mentioned earlier, in Arizona and some of these more desolate areas. You're actually creating the environment where Border Patrol, along with those agencies that support Border Patrol, to be pulled into just manning hundreds of thousands of people within soft-sided detention facilities, pulling those Border Patrol agents off the line, moving them away from the mission set of counterterrorism, counter-narcotics, human smuggling, human trafficking, and you create literal chaos in the aggregate within that bill if you actually put those restrictions on law enforcement officers in the manner in which that bill did.
Okay.
We're no more than 48 hours away from the fraudulent impeachment of the Secretary of Homeland Security, who was impeached simply for performing his legal duties under severe resource constraints. And this took place at the time that the Secretary was actually negotiating the successful bipartisan package in the Senate, which the Republicans then denounced and rejected. As we've proven time and again, House Democrats are ready to work with anyone to enact common sense legislation to address the decades-long broken immigration system. But the majority's just proven they don't want border solutions, they want border problems to run on, because abortion is no longer available to them because Donald Trump packed the Supreme Court with his Federalist Society hacks. They destroyed Roe versus Wade. And when it went out to the public, what did they discover? America is a country that believes in freedom for women too. And from Kansas to Ohio to California to Maine, the people have been rejecting all of their anti-abortion tactics and attempts to pass a federal law criminalizing women's health care. Just yesterday, a 20-year veteran federal law enforcement officer from the U.S. Border Patrol told the Washington Examiner he's demoralized because Republicans in Congress are abandoning his agency and forcing it to fend for itself. The agent, a registered Republican, told the reporter that Republicans are now, quote, sheep in wolves' clothing, and that their inaction and passivity is akin to leaving a soldier in the missing of an ambush. When Trump was president, his policies put kids in cages, and his officials illegally spent appropriated federal dollars meant to provide care for vulnerable detainees on dog food and vision night goggles. We should take him at his word when he threatens further inhumane action and when he walks away from serious bipartisan legislation. To fix immigration, Congress needs to address it from the roots. As our witness, Mr. Hauser, stated, this problem neither starts nor ends at the border. People who migrate to the border do so at great peril. The question is why? What are they fleeing? And how can we be part of a solution that prevents them from having to make that deadly choice in the first place? I want to restate that we're ready to craft serious, bipartisan, humane policy solutions, the kind that Democrats and Republicans came up with in the Senate. We hope the House Republicans will remove themselves from the spell of Donald Trump and join us in doing serious legislation instead of just blowing everything up. And we hope that they decide to go this way fast. We have 3 legislative days before the government completely runs out of funding. And under our friends in the GOP, we've just been lurching from crisis to crisis. ICE is so strapped for cash, it's forced to make extremely difficult decisions right now. Let's do our jobs, let's get together, and let's get serious for the American people. I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.